This is IBM Museum, and I certainly hope that my recording system is able to keep up with me. I had to go through and delay recording a video just because it was having other stuff going on, and I was seeing some lags there. But I've gone through in the last few days, I've received in batteries for my UPS in back here, and I have those batteries charged up. This unit is actually ready to connect on to have the AS400 connect or anything else like that would happen. But the I'm looking for a cable that interconnects us to the AS400. I've posted a YouTube announcement on my channel about that. Now I have had another cable come in, another 9-pin cable, and it would be kind of cool to go through and console the Ethernet switch I have here, the 8275. That's Ethernet. It's connected to the AS400. I want to go through and work with that a little bit, and then I have that also that big token ring unit. Another video to go through and to show what the console interface looks like for that. And I mean, I'm learning about what it will appear as anyway. I don't think I've consoled into these units quite yet, or it's been a while for this one. Now, I do apologize. I've got this kind of off to the side. I've got this stack and interconnected. It's just not easy enough for me to rotate around and put on the bench here to be visible where I would go through and console into it. I did go through and I waited for a console cable. And ultimately, this is a Null Modem cable, 9-pin to 9-pin. And I'll pull that out of the bag in a moment. But as I said, you know, I could have gone through and I could have cobbled something together because I have enough Null Modems devices, but they're all these 25-pin, and I just want to go from straight 9-pin device to, you know, if I've got 9 pins at either side for the connections, I want to do it that way. So I just have to make sure that and I want to make sure that I'm not really seeing any lag time or anything else between the webcam view and me handling stuff on the bench here. And I don't know if that's going to be true. I'm seeing a few freeze ups. So I'm going to have to go through and even review this video and make sure, you know, that it's going to be good enough quality. I don't know what the story is there on my system. I just have to leave it basically online up and running for a little bit before I try and go through and record on it or what. But this is a Null Modem cable, and it's got just those 9-pin connections at either end. I don't think it's even embossed. Oh yeah, it is. Well, no, it's just with the what would be considered the brand name for this. All this is relatively generic. It's under the StarTech.com brand, and really, for all it's worth, it flips the wiring through the length of the cable. This is a 10-foot, is what they say. I could probably believe that. And I'm going to go through, I'll get switched over to the to being Tweener system here that I'm going to run the session from. Just a moment. Let's go through, let's run it down this way, just so we're not paralleling any power cords or anything like that. I don't think I'm disturbing anything and getting my connections established. I'm not going to tighten any anything in the sockets. They should just friction fit on both sides. And let's see. Get switched over to the Tweener system. And for the Windows platform, I've got my puTTY down here. But it's always kind of good. Just hiding notification message I'm getting about that iProfiler. But let's go through and let's look, of course, under Windows XP for the device manager. I don't know what that unknown device is still, but we're interested in the COM ports. And it looks like these are pretty standard on the back. These are physical ports, 9-pin connections on the back, COM1, COM2, and a printer port as well. And I'm in the top connection of that printer port. Now, I'm a little bit more used to, in a modern context, going through and using these, and man, that thing looks like it's dusty. Even though I've used these quite a bit, that sure is. And that's just a USB, and these are the prolific. They call them under the prolific adapters. There's a little bit of constraints that you have to do with the operating systems, whether it's something as old as like Windows XP, or you go through for Windows 7 up to Windows 10. I'm sure under the Windows 11, there's different versions of these, and you have to make sure what you have is compatible. But it just goes in a USB connection, since a lot of the computers nowadays don't have a physical 9-pin port on the back of the system. Or you can have a laptop, of course, that doesn't have one of those pins that you go around. And that's the old school of being able to console an equipment to physically connect, on site to where that equipment is. There's other mechanisms, of course, that you can get the same effect from a distance, and other devices even, to go through and to get that set up. But let's go back to our puTTY setup, and we are all connected. Now, in the manual, and I guess I can probably go through to use the, I have at least for the 8275, I do have the manual, and I have chapter 4 is the area that talks about going through and using the management interface. And it goes through to where it talks about the port settings. And of course, for the defaults I have here, I'm on a 9600 baud. And I could go through there and examine those settings a little bit more, but this is set up for exactly what I need to go in there and to establish a connection to this so-called management interface through the Null Modem. And so let's see what this does. And we may be on other okay. So let's go through. Let's try, rather than switch to physical ports on the back, let's go through and let's try COM2. And we could be off on a little bit. There we go. So even though other information doesn't set up, I'm taking this with the field like that. I'm taking that as a login. Let's see if it keeps that up on the screen. Okay, so there, when we press enter a few times at least, we get it where it said the login was incorrect, but we did get the further information at least. I want to leave this manual open, and I'm too, of course, this effective screen shows the IBM, and it has the username and password, and I hope I haven't changed this. I think otherwise, yeah, one default is admin and requires no password. The other default is guest and has the password of guest. And of course, you can set the security higher in necessarily maybe case sensitive, but okay. So admin with the blank password got us in. Of course, I would go through, and if I would have this in a production environment, I'd go through and change that. And I can just put this manual down. I was even looking at the possibility of that does pretty good for enlarging things, I guess. And I'm first going to go for the system information, and just to see some details there. I'm hoping that that shows up well enough on the screen. Oh, it looks like I've even configured this. I've got my name, and maybe I did have this set up previously for the looks like it was set up for the basement where I have a lot of the equipment. And okay. And system uptime 19 days, 3 hours, 4 minutes. Goes through there and refreshes. I've named the system. I'll go through and I'll update at some point. And then you see for the system management, it's got that web and SNMP. We'll look at the web interfaces for these devices at a later point as well. So these fields are probably look like they have the ability to be edited, and then you go through and you can save through selecting those entries at the bottom. And it does object ID. I believe that there should be a, see what the tab does. Okay, the tab goes through for save, exit, main menu. There should be a, I believe, a TCP setting on this. We just looked at the system information. We'll look at management setup next. Okay. And the network configuration. Network interface type, MAC address. And then I've got IP address information that I could go through. In fact, this would even be set up for one of the subnets that I have at home. And I'm probably going to go through and change. I'll probably change the AS400 IP address just to get some convention scheme that I can do between them. But it's interesting to know the the web setup for this at a later point. I'll go through and I can put an IP on the PC and even go through for that web interface. Now, a lot of that is going to be based on the navigation of these devices. A lot of time was you had to use the Internet Explorer. You got into version 5, version 6 is a common thing when the web access or the web interface for these devices was set, and at that time they were even into an HTTP scheme, not the HTTPS. That would be the modern equivalent now. Of course, the secure page. You just went through port 80, and even some of the stuff, a lot of time, and you'd get on the web interface and it would show a picture of the device, even show what ports were up or down, not connected, whatever. You could get graphs of the utilization and things like that, like the thing has for its front panel. But that was through the Java interface a lot of the time. And of course, we've had the news now of the vulnerability with the aspects relating to Java in the logging stuff. So there's even a chance where this equipment, of course, is not typically used in a production environment anymore. But the fact is that going through on those for just having the web interface in the manual, it talks about a telnet interface. Those are not secure mechanisms to go through and to get on equipment across the internet. I mean, there's where passwords for those devices, the login credentials can be captured as that transits the network. And so there's, of course, modern equivalents. The reason I have PuTTY on my Tweener system is for that SSH aspect, or what the modern way to access devices, equipment remotely, through that security of SSH. So I'll just remember the aspects of the IP address that are set here for this currently. And I don't know if you can go through for the network. I don't know what it's mean by the network interface. Maybe it's bound to particular ports is one possibility. I'm not going to look at the aspect of changing it, and certainly I'll go through and I can look at the manual just to make sure being able to go through and change that network interface. I have to see how the device is configured from there. I don't think it has individual port settings or the TCP saying for particular ports, as sometimes could be the case. And so we can go back to the main menu. And I'm going to go down to, excuse me, down to my management setup. Oh, okay, excuse me. This is a submenu, the management. And so I want to look at the serial port configuration. We're, of course, over the serial port right now. We would not go through and normally modify this through this interface. And then it has the ability for the operation mode to probably go through there and to to adjust that, or maybe to rename that from that default, just to be a little bit more, just to go through and personalize it probably a little bit more, or be a little bit more specific on settings. SNMP. Okay. Those are settings I could do for monitoring at a later point. The trap receiver. And it, of course, has examples for these within that manual as well. And management capability setup. Okay, and web-based, and you can turn that web-based enable or disable. And I'll leave that at enabled because we're wanting to go through and to check that at a particular point as well, to see kind of what that web interface looks like as well. I'm going to go back to the main menu, back from this management setup, device control, switch control status. Let's see what that looks like. Okay. It gives us the machine type and model number. All the information that we did see in a little bit of that system information screen. And of course, this is just patched into the AS400. There's not any matching of network addresses or anything else between the two systems. So I'm not expecting to see really much data or anything relevant in that case. Okay. And switch port control status. Okay. And we could go through all the port numbers of this. You can go through and even name the ports. You know, very granular configuration on this device. And you know, you can control the port and set the enable or disable it, and go through for the duplex. And of course, this is most of the ports on the unit for this A275 are 10 megabit per second. There's a couple ports on it that are the 10/100 megabit per second, but most of the ports are 10 megabit per second, and that is sufficient for me. I mean, this would be a good device as I go through with some of the older equipment that can have Ethernet boards on them, like PS2s. There's not any faster cards typically for the 100 megabit or even gigabit or faster as we have now. But all these ports are going to be all the same, where you can go through and to change that. And of course at the bottom, and I didn't have to look because this is doing, it looks like port number 1, and it talks about the interface type. And I don't think this is just one of the 10 megabit ports, but I could go through and I could step through all the different port connections. And at a later point, go through there and nickname them for what connections they had, to get organized for which port goes to the AS400 and other devices. So, and then we have this as a way to go through there and We have the next port. Next port. All these settings, of course, toggling through are the defaults. It's where it's not been set up on the switch. But I could go through, I could work my way through all these ports. Now, let's go back to the permanent address configuration. And that's probably like a route, I would think. Although I'd have to study the manual a little bit more. And it has fields for the MAC address. And other information. This, to me, looks like where it's a lot of the route setup based on the MAC address and what port it's connected to. VLAN control, always kind of helpful with the switch. I have the ability to go through there and to set up, it looks like up to 4 different VLANs, which would be sufficient in this case with this unit. Gives me enough control of what ports are in which VLAN. Okay. And toggling, this is just tabbing through, basically. I should have gone through. I could have gone through to go effectively back the other way with the console keys. Spanning tree protocol, VLAN group configuration, and these are settings that are done also through can be done through the web interface as well. Okay. All kinds of information. And we have the choices at the bottom for the different switching between the VLANs. Okay. And our spanning tree protocol, VLAN port configuration. Okay. Just trying to give a view of the different menus that are set here. We have user authentication. Of course, I don't have anything set up currently. It looks like I did go through and create addition of a username for myself. And I could go through there and to edit that. Even for that time frame, I don't even remember what password I would have gone through and likely used. But it shows the guest as read-only. And that control that's for the front of the unit, that control panel password. There is, can be login, even if you're local to it. You know, you can set on the unit to where you have to log in to be able to see anything on the front of that display of the unit as well. And that may be needed for some environments. Lastly, from the main menu, we have the system utility. And that's probably a lot with the system firmware. They have a factory reset, download port setting, and then your login timeout interval. And I mean, if you're logged in for a certain length of time and then it automatically kicks you out, severs that connection, just as a security as well. but I do have the ability to go through and do a system restart from this. And that's even the thought for that web interface or remote access. In this case, telnet access rather than SSH, that you'd have the remote ability to go through and restart the unit. So that's kind of a good cover of the switch. And get back out to the camcorder view. And just seeing that lag between the two video sources, wow. So I'll go through and check out this video just to make sure that that's where I can upload it, that's consistent enough. I don't have problems with my recording station here, and see how that goes. And then at a later point, I'll do that 8239 switch, token ring side. I'll go through and also do counseling into it, kind of see what that shows as well. So a little bit of still off the wall content. I'm preparing for other video content still, including going through and that benchmarking of the MUL 5657 planers I've been talking about, and there's some additions. There's probably a little bit of programming I'm going to have to do with that to where to turn off and on the caching abilities of the CPUs just for testing purposes. But that should be a little easy enough utility program for me to do. And I'm still kind of putting things together for that, mapping out the details of how involved that's going to be. But certainly if you like these videos, go ahead and click on that like button and subscribe my channel if you have not done so already. Recommend it to your friends so I can get more subscribers. I'm just shy of 900 subscribers. We're still on that push to 1,000 subscribers. Would be just a nice place to be, even though I want to go beyond that. But, that'll come with time. So that's all I have for now. This is IBM Museum. Thank you.